Hey, this is Walt with Ray Buck Auto Body Parts. Today we're going to take a look at the 350 small block Chevy. It's going to be going into our 67 Chevy pickup. Just go over basically what we did with the motor and the results we got with it. This motor is a 74, originally a 74 small block 350. I'm sure it was out of a truck, van, something like that. Picked this motor up pretty much complete. Decided we just wanted to do a complete rebuild on it, but keep it essentially stock, some mild upgrades. So what we ended up doing with it, well, let's start from the top. Went with the Quadratic Carburetor. Most people are going, if they're going to a carburetor, they're going to a Holly. I chose to go with Quadratic just because it was available to me. Quadradits work really well. They are a spread bore carburetor compared to a square bore carburetor like a Holly, and I think it does give you a little bit better fuel mileage. These have smaller primaries than secondaries, so as long as you're not, got your foot in the gas, the smaller primaries should help a little bit on gas mileage, since we do plan on driving this truck. Kind of a daily driver type truck. Nothing, nothing's going to just sit around. So, underneath the carburetor, we got a Performer intake manifold. That's pretty standard. This is a Performer 2101. The cost of this manifold is pretty comparable to a lot of other more budget manifolds out there. So, the Edelbrock intake manifolds have always been pretty, tried and true thing that you go with. So that's what we're using for the intake. Ignition wise, we were running the same distributor that came in the original 283 that was in the truck. I took the distributor out, had all the intentions of changing it, and then realized that there wasn't really anything wrong with it. The gear on the distributor looked good, there really wasn't a lot of play in the distributor, so decided just to keep the distributor. We did do a few upgrades to it. Took the points out, put in a Protronix ignition module, cap rotor, the usual thing. We upgraded to a Protronix coil from the stock coil, and just put some better wires on it. These are Taylor 8mm plug wires. And other than that, it's basic ignition system. We didn't want to put any type of ignition box or anything on it. I wanted to keep this just basic, the way it came in the truck. So that's it for the ignition. Going down to the cylinder heads, we have a set of aluminum heads from Liberty Performance. Originally the plan was to keep the steel heads on the motor. But the more I kind of looked into the cost of aluminum heads versus rebuilding the steel heads, the aluminum heads were kind of a no-brainer. The one problem with the steel heads is the push-in rocker arm studs. There's nothing that really retains them into the head. They're just kind of a press fit into the head. And once you start, changing camshafts, putting, bigger springs in, things like that, it's possible for those studs to work their way out, and you could have some type of failure. So once, I started looking at the cost to, basically check the heads over, make sure they are in good condition, valve jobs, valve guides, springs, just going through all that, cutting the heads for guide plates and screw-in studs. Once you end up doing all that, the cost of aluminum heads kind of, makes sense. These are, even though it is aluminum heads, it is a budget head. We got these for, I think, like 850 bucks. So, and the one nice thing about these heads is you can order them complete, but you can order the springs to go with the camshaft you got. So that's nice, because a lot of time when you order, just an off-the-shelf, replacement head, you kind of get a spring in it that is just, in a certain range. So it's not specific to the camshaft. It's good for a certain range of camshaft, which typically work fine as long as you're not at the extreme end of what that spring is capable of handling. But these heads work real nice. They make good power on the dyno. They look like a nice head, so we'll see how they work. But moving on from that, camshaft to go with, as I said, to go with the heads and the springs. We went with the comp cams. It's a part number 12238-2. I selected that cam kind of multiple reasons on why I went with that cam. One being I wanted to keep power brakes on the truck, so I think that cam with the specs on that, it's a 218, 224 at 50 and a 426, 469 lift cam. I think with that duration and lift, and I think that's on a 112 lobe separation. So with those specs and just from what I've looked at, I think that cam should be good, to make enough vacuum to run power brakes. I know a lot of people run bigger cams with power brakes, and a lot of times they'll have to run like a vacuum canister or something, to keep some vacuum on reserve for when you initially hit the brakes. Hopefully I won't have to do that. I didn't want to have to get into adding another thing onto the brakes like that, but we'll see. Also, I chose a cam that I thought sounded pretty good. I want the truck to be real drivable and have good street manners and all that, but I also wanted a little bit of a cam sound to it. So this cam seems like it should work pretty good after watching like a bunch of YouTube sound videos and looking at some things. I think it'll be a good cam, but we'll see. Made pretty good power, but you never know till you get it in the truck and see how it drives. Bottom end wise, it is essentially the stock bottom end components. Basically we reconditioned the rods, the crank, put new pistons in it. We put a set of I think it was Speed Pro hyper-eutectic pistons in it. The motor, when I got it, had already been rebuilt once, so it was bored. It was 30 thousandths over. Luckily though, the bores were in good shape. They were actually pretty tight yet, so we really didn't have to really do much in the way of like a bore to the cylinder or anything like that. Simply honed it, got new pistons, rings, all that. The whole rotating assembly was balanced. That's always good insurance to make sure that things stay together. Put some new rod bolts in it, better bolts, things like that. Just a little cheap insurance to make sure it's all stays together. Put some new tins on it. The pan that was originally on the motor was a chrome oil pan that was just shot. The front timing cover wasn't too bad, but it had something had happened on the bottom. It looked like somebody welded it or epoxied it, so I wasn't going to use that, so we replaced it. We are putting headers on this. Obviously the truck came with original like cast log style manifolds. I just wanted something that, since we are putting some better parts on it, something that would flow a little bit better. I think this is like a 1 5/8 header, and it has a 2.5 inch outlet, so that will work good because we plan on running 2.5 inch exhaust on it with probably some Flowmaster mufflers. But that's pretty much the motor. With all that said, we did run the motor on the dyno. We'll have a short video here at the end, and the motor made about 370 horsepower and a little over 400 foot-pounds of torque. I think it was like 406 or something like that. So pretty good numbers for what is considered kind of a budget build, and it's right where I wanted to be with that. I think it'll make it'll have good power for just cruising around. And I think the peak RPM on that was around a little over 5,000. Peak torque, I think, was right around a little over 4,000. So should be a good, good little motor. Hopefully, You know, hopefully we don't have any problems with it. You never know on a rebuild, but we'll see. So, but that's it for the for the engine build. If you guys have any questions on any of the parts and pieces we used, and just anything in general about the motor, the truck, anything we've done so far, please comment. We'd love to hear from people and answer questions. But other than that, that's about it for the motor. If you guys haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do. We appreciate that. And with that said, here's a little video of the motor on the dyno. Thanks.